Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Khan and this is.
Well, Assalamu alaikum, this is Bakhtiar.
Welcome back. So, thank you for following us on YouTube. And I was thinking about the idea about, comparing the first generation or second generation to the other generation in terms of the work ethic. Back there, the first generation worked hard. They were grafters. They used to work in a place called GPO, in a post office. They used to there used to be forklift drivers. They worked 10, 15 hours in factories just to provide sustenance for their families, pay their bills, pay their rents. Through hard work and determination, they then started to buy a house, and then obviously, raise their kids, take the kids to the mosque, take the kids to the school. The problem started to arise when those kids started to become 14, 15, 16, and then the work ethic didn't wasn't the same with their kids. A lot of the kids, we don't want to name kids, because that's not how the pod works. A lot of the kids started to steal from Woolworths. Is it Woolworths? Woolworths. Up and down. They should go on a nicking spree, right? But it was okay. It was kids, you were kids, right? But they left the idea of doing well at school.
The evolution basically in that there was the work ethic basically the older generation brought, and obviously I'm sure we're looking at it with rose-tinted spectacles as well, because those which everybody has a black sheep in their family which has done naughty things. Every community has that. The older generation would obviously kind of shy away from actually discussing that with anybody, saying, oh, your generation is bad, your generation is naughty, your generation has done this, we didn't do this back in the day. But obviously, when you earwig on certain conversations,
they did.
Yes.
They used to drink the old amber nectar.
Like I say,
yeah.
that kind
Come
of
on,
thing.
bro.
There were certain ones which were rebels, but
they used to have girlfriends.
Their girlfriends,
yeah.
second wives, third wives.
Yeah.
That obviously
amnesia. Yes.
They
still have amnesia.
No, selective memory.
Yeah.
I think is probably the better term. But that is something which, when we were growing up and we were teenagers, I think it was stigmatized in the community more than anything else. And it was a stick to basically beat a person down with, saying, oh, well, look at such and such's son. He's ended up in prison because he's been naughty, he's been selling drugs, he's been stealing cars, he's been having fights. The fights thing, to be honest with you, I don't think that was really looked at as a stigma base. If anything,
no.
that was more a badge of honour. If you had a fight and ended up in prison, it was probably looked at as a badge of honour, saying, well, you could have been fighting for totally the wrong reasons, but it was like polishing a turd, and the community were very good at polishing turds at that stage. So, fighting wise, it wasn't a negative stigma which was attached to it. Anything else, the negativity, and then when somebody ended up in prison, the thing was, which baffles me, was you'd have family and community members going around to people's houses. Oh, your son's ended up. I'm sorry to hear your son's ended up in prison. It's really a bad thing. If there's anything I can do, what are you actually, a judge, a magistrate, or a solicitor, a barrister? Are you going to actually?
It's just gossip, isn't it? Gossip.
Yeah, gossip. But the stigma which was attached to the naughty boy element, has that actually ever been really discussed in detail?
No, it hasn't. It's got even worse actually. Now, every family nowadays has a black sheep within the family, and people like to point their finger, put people down. Say, look at your family.
But comparing that basically back to when we were teenagers and around that time, when you had a black sheep in the family or somebody was doing something naughty, how was that conceived in the community?
I don't know, I think it's frowned upon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the younger generation used to respect people that had a bit of dirt on them. That's what I usually think about.
Do you think that the sway of the actual community itself may have kept certain people more in line than anything else? Because if you were naughty or you were stepping out of line and then you were told basically by the stigma which was attached to being naughty, do you think that would have actually kept
Obviously,
somebody on the straight and narrow?
obviously, he would have. He would have. You know what I mean? Because if you were borderline psychotic, and the community came in and said, look, you sort your son out. 9 times out of 10, you'll sort yourself out. But today you don't have that. There's not that. That help for people who want to. Nowadays, it's a free for all. It's a free for all. Where kids nowadays, I'll tell you what kids want today, right? I'll tell you what they want. They don't want nice houses. They want a flashy car.
I'd be more interested in what we were, when we were growing up. We can look at nowadays what kids want and how they want to act. Basically, that is totally off our.
What did the kids want back in the days? They wanted the same as the kids want today: a flashy car, or Cortina,
Yeah.
right? Nice clothes, perfume, flash the cash, going out.
You've
It's
missed one thing.
What?
They had to have the jewellery to go with it.
Yeah.
The
Did
80s and 90s.
Did they have a gold ring?
80s, 80s and 90s generation were all about massive gold rings and
Yeah,
massive
I
gold
can't remember
chains.
that, Yeah. Medallions.
Yes, medallions, chaps, rings, sovereigns, as they used to kind of say.
Yeah. So, those kids growing up, they wanted that lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
They wanted that lifestyle, and they did whatever they wanted to get that lifestyle, right? At the detriment of family structure,
Yeah. So,
okay? Because they cared about themselves.
So how do you think that reflected on families at that generation and that time?
You know what? The families at that time pulled their hair out because they tried everything to kind of speak to their son, or it was their sons mostly, and it was shameful that their son would go into criminality and not listen to the local imam or not listen to a respected elder in the community who would come to the house and say, look, I think you need to behave yourself. Because the son would take it upon himself to say, look, I understand you're right, but I have these desires and I'll do whatever I want. And
how do you think that stigma was dealt with?
what are you saying, through a chopper?
I'm just asking the question, basically. If you think
No, there was. I mean, the parent was violent towards their son. Alam got kicked out, turfed out.
Do you think that actually helped in any way, though? When you turf your son out, if anything, you turf your son out or your daughter out who's being naughty, at that stage, basically, you've given them a free run, saying, well...
There was tension in the family. I'm sure there was tension in the family where the mom will come between the son and the husband, and she'll get beating, right? And she will get beating in front of her kids to protect the eldest, who's gone astray, who's kind of doesn't want to listen to the father or anyone in the community. And to see your mom get a slap by your dad, you know what? It's quite bad, and I think it's horrific, that kind of domestic violence, because most families back here at that time must have seen that kind of violence.
Yeah, but
in the family.
You've seen the violence, basically. So the criminality element, because it's something which seems to be brushed under the carpet by certain elders and certain people that you speak to. Was the criminality, do you think, ever encouraged by the elders? Because when you had certain people, certain community members basically, which had kids, which went onto a criminal path, obviously the financial gains on a criminal path can be substantial if you're
There's
involved.
no evidence for that.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that families will encourage their kids to go and go on the rob or grow sell drugs.
No, okay.
They saw the benefits of
hence what I'm coming to,
of
basically.
that. They saw the
So the benefits of that.
I would hope they wouldn't encourage them.
With the benefits of that, basically, so when you had a delinquent child doing criminality, and obviously the family would be saying, well, my son or my daughter basically isn't a criminal, and that would be the carte blanche response to it. However, the financial gains which came from it, so all of a sudden, when you couldn't afford a 21-inch TV, everybody else had a black and white.
They didn't say no to it.
Yeah.
Put it that way. I mean, then the families benefit from their son's criminal activity. I mean, obviously, suddenly you've gone from a one-story house in Pakistan to 3 stories. Yeah, you've gone from one land housing pack in the village to houses in the cities in the nice areas. So because even the father have kind of have corrupted his soul,
Yeah.
right? He has corrupted his soul because he's now he said, okay, I can do better things with that money that comes from my son's criminal activity, and I'm gonna buy houses here. I'm gonna drive a flashy car. I'm gonna have houses improvements in my own house.
Would you say that was the majority which did that, which come into criminal money, or would it be the minority?
No, I think the majority kind of just gone. There was, don't forget, there were kids doing taxiing,
No.
and there, but there was only a minority within the Pashtun community,
Yeah, so
that would go into criminal activity,
it's
the drugs and all that kind of
it's
stuff,
that
right?
it's the minority basically.
Yeah.
Because
It wasn't a
Well,
majority.
yeah.
Although, don't forget back there, Pashtun, they're hard. Whatever we say about the Pashtun, right?
yeah,
Right? They work. They're hard. Whether it's taxi driving or working in a factory or doctors, lawyers, they graft. They put their hours. Then there's within the peripheries, right? There's elements within the Pashtun community who kind of don't want to work, who want to take an easy way out, and crime pays for
Cri-
them. Crime pays.
Crime may pay for them basically, but it's like like I said, we have different perspectives because I grew up in a slightly different area to yourself. I'm not saying that it was any better or it was any worse. It was probably on a par. But when we were looking at it from when we were younger and what we were told by the elders, when there was a criminality element which was attached to it, and kids were doing the wrong things and earning illegal money, basically, my parents were so anti-illegal money at that stage, and they still are. To be fair to them, and so am I. That you're anti that basically, and they're saying the way that they've stigmatized them. You'd think to yourself, would it not be better if somebody spoke to these people which were involved in criminality, gave them a chance to reform, better their lives, and actually provided them with directions, as opposed to just downright not slandering them, but downright just basically kicking off with them and saying, "You're wrong, they're bad people, you shouldn't associate with them."
You know what? It's a fine line between what you believe in and what others should believe in. Sometimes within the communities you'll have, all the fingers my fingers on my hand are all different, right? If it's not for me, right back there, or for anyone else to go to someone and say, look, we think you're behaving wrong, for the better of the society, sort yourself out. Because ultimately they'll just say, look, you're right, but I enjoy what I do, right? It gives me the pleasures, it gives me the outlet in terms of the designer clothing, and that that's just the way. And then you hope one day you talk about religion in the part one. You talk. Maybe one day the penny will drop, and they realize that all their years of hustling money and doing all the things was fruitless. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's the only thing you could say to them.
Looking at that time, me and you were basically teenagers and a little bit beyond that, basically early 20s. And you can even probably apply it to now. I don't actually feel that there was any kind of support network for anybody. I don't even still think that there is one to this date, basically.
There ain't no support network.
When you're struggling with something, or you're getting involved in criminality, or you're going down the wrong path, there's a lot of people which will beat you with a stick, basically telling you what you should and shouldn't do. But is there any kind of guidance? Because I don't feel, when I was growing up, especially, and where I grew up in Sparkbrook, it wasn't like there was a massive Pashtun community there. I don't feel there was any kind of guidance, basically, where an elder or somebody which had more experience than you would actually sit you down and say to you, you know what? This is the path that you are leading, basically, and show you the ills of your way, because criminality and doing the wrong thing is probably the easiest thing to do. You don't need to be supremely intelligent. You don't need to have any degree of foreplanning or anything of the sort. Not only you need to be stupid enough and be prepared to lose your liberty.
You know what it is? Yeah, there's a saying called each one teach one. So if you make it in life, then the person below you, and not below you in that sense, help them out. There isn't, you're right in one sense, that, as a community, and we're not a big community in Birmingham. that there aren't a group of people, but we don't want to be patronizing to people at the same time. The only way that it's going to work is, you know, when people see you and you say nice things. You know, I speak to drug dealers. I speak to the normal person. I talk to them with a respectful way. You know what I'm saying? I said, bro, at the end of the day, we hope that you kind of change your life at some point because you can't go down this path all the time. They know they're doing wrong. They ain't stupid, but the fact that they respect you for saying it, and maybe one day the penny will drop on these kids, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of bird is needed a few times. It's not just people go to prison a few times. They'll probably will because
Prison basically comes with its own thing, basically, because in the early, well, from time when I was growing up, when I was looking at it, basically, any time that you found somebody in the community, basically, which was in prison, everybody used to frown on it.
yeah, it was a stick.
It was a stigma. It was a stigma to beat you with. Basically, it was the stick which used to beat you and beat you heavily, kind of thing. The stigma is something different. Stigma is something different, but obviously the games change. The end results are still the same, aren't they? Really, if you think about it, because I don't feel that there's a support network as such. Guidance seems to be something which doesn't seem to exist. And anytime you ask about guidance and you're saying we should guide, we should provide, we should mentor, that doesn't really seem to happen. But then who's to take the lead on this?
You know, back in the days, they used to think of it as a musher, right?
Yeah.
A respected elder. Nowadays, people don't want to take it upon themselves to get involved in other ones and other people's business, and that's where it's fallen short. You know, if people, there are some good person out there. You know, we're decent guys. They may be taxi drivers, but they're some decent guys. They've got good philosophy, good understanding. All they have to do, is reach the hand out to everyone, and maybe because don't forget the Pashtun community means a lot to us, and we don't want it to go down the toilet because if we choose to keep ourselves to ourselves and not help anyone else out, you know what? It's gonna self-destruct. But we have to take it upon ourselves that when you're around Pashtun, whether the young girls or whatever, speak nicely to them, advise them to do education, tell them to do apprenticeships, tell them to do work in McDonald's, work in KFC. I don't care. Tell them to work, right? Because you will be their role model for them, and you know what? And that will probably deter them from going into drugs if they are decided to go into drugs, and give them an alternative path other than drug dealing or whatever things that they want to do. You know what I mean? At the moment, back there, there's too many Pashtun kids who are so arrogant and so loud that they rather sit in the car and sell drugs rather than work hard.
Yeah. So
I'll leave the last bit to you.
yeah, in summary, basically, the stigma and what was attached. Families basically used to display, and it used to be a badge of shame when a child basically got involved in criminality. When we were growing up, when they looked at it, it wasn't something which was looked at as the status quo. It wasn't looked at as, oh, it's normal to be in prison. Obviously, time has evolved, people have evolved. You're still having the same heartache and pain in families that you had at that stage. It's just now, basically, because it's more prevalent, that people aren't looking at it in the same way. I think that's probably how I'd summarise it.
Well, thank you very much, Back to you for that.
Thank you very much
for your analysis, and I hope this makes some sense to each and one of you. Just follow us in our next YouTube channel. This is Dr. Khan.
And this is Bakhtiar. Goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.